Okay. Can everyone see? Okay, so welcome to Extend and Repairs Hub to allow RCC agents to raise and manage contractor repairs. As I said, this will be recorded. So a bit about show and tells. So these are our regular methods that we use in Agile projects to keep everyone updated on progress, and it provides an opportunity for feedback. So we'll openly share what we've been learning, what's coming next, and any questions and much needed feedback. We'll be working in 2 weekly sprints, which means at the end of every sprint, we will present at show and tell. So it'll be this time every 2 weeks. And it gives the opportunity for anyone that's got an interest in the project to provide feedback. Okay, so the team, we've got Lindsay as our product owner, supported by Barnes as the deputy. Myself, Sarah Donegan, I'm the delivery manager. And then the Unbox team, we have Tom's delivery. And we've got Boris, Lawrence, and Dawn, who are all design. And then Pudim, he's in one of the developers. She's actually gone off sick, so we're going to have Evangelos joining us. And then I haven't put your names on here, but also we've been supported by Matt Kay. Alex is going to be joining us. And we've had support from lots of other people, but this is kind of the core team as it stands. And over to Lindsay.
Okay, so just to give a bit of history on the Repairs Hub, this is currently the 3rd phase of development to the Repairs Hub. Phase 1, the concept of the Repairs Hub was first developed, and what we achieved then was we had visibility of the complex repairs, and it was mainly used by the Leaks Hub, and it was used in conjunction with universal housing. The 2nd phase of the hub was developed to give it raise and repair functionality, and that was rolled out mainly in the RCC, but also in other back office teams. And that was only for was only for the DLO. So we're currently in phase 3, which is the extension of the Repairs Hub to raise and manage contractor repairs, but also to completely remove the reliance on universal housing. So our aim to extend the Repairs Hub for the contractors and enabling the migration of repairs management from UH. So what we want to do is have the ability to book reactive repairs directly with contractors via the hub, remove all dependency on universal housing, increase visibility on the progress of contractor repairs, have better partnership working with our contractors, and have a standardised approach to using the hub.
Thank you. Barnes, over to you.
You're on mute, Barnes.
Thank you for that, Boris. Yeah. So the project context and goals. So first of all, primarily the biggest aim is to remove dependencies on UH for the repairs service. Then in a more specific area, moving the management of the contractor repairs onto the Repairs Hub, whilst demonstrating plausible alternatives to legacy systems, to internal stakeholders and local government. So features and work streams will be prioritised on how much they help move towards each of these various goals.
Thank you, Barnes. What we did.
Okay, so these first 2 sprints, we've been doing lots and lots of interviews, obviously remotely via Google Meet. As part of the interviews, been doing a lot of process mapping to sort of really understand the challenges, the obstacles, the flow of data, and to really understand which areas we'll be focusing on. Next slide, please. So who we've spoken to so far? We've spoken to 5 contractors, some contract managers to understand the relationship between Hackney and the contractors, the way the contractors are managed, some RCC agents, a couple of those, a surveyor and a communal work who, so it's good to speak to someone who's out in the field. Moving forward, we'd like to speak to some of these people listed here. So you see 2 administrators, because we're finding speaking to those admin roles, we can really understand the finer detail of the process. But this list isn't definitive. If there is anyone missing, if you know of anyone that we should be speaking to, particularly those who use UH and the Repairs Hub, please let us know. Thanks.
Right, so into the technical discovery. So we've had an hour-long chat so far talking about how we can technically make some of these changes that have been spoken about. And this slide is quite wordy, but there was a lot spoken about, really. It pulled together the Unbox team, myself and Alex as developers, and Nick Prince, who's kind of the universal housing guru. And our ideas at the moment, and these are all very tentative, we have got another technical meeting to kind of iron these out, but the initial idea was to build a new API. So we have an API which is our way of integrating between the Repairs Hub, the nice shiny front end, and the back end systems that are used as part of the repairs process, whether that's universal housing, whether it's DRS. But it's relatively old and not necessarily fit for purpose, and could certainly be improved. So our idea: build a new API, and probably also build a new database in AWS with a different structure. This would be our way of trying out pulling away from universal housing and seeing what we can do. However, we know there are processes that are still wrapped up in universal housing. So while we would be writing to this new shiny new database that would hopefully be much more available because it's sitting in the cloud, we still need to kind of push that data into universal housing, so all the billing and processes that happen in there can happen. But that's some of the other things we'd need a new way to authenticate Repairs Hub access. And what that means is when Repairs Hub users go to or the officers go to use Repairs Hub, at the moment they use their Hackney logins. The contractors don't have these, so we need to find a different way of providing that access. There's also an authorization workflow, so that would be the I don't 100% understand the ins and outs of it, but essentially it's the contractors having an amount of repair they're able to raise without it being authorized. We would need to build that into Repairs Hub, and then you've got all these integrations currently between UH and like Servitor, DRS, etc. So we'd kind of need to redo all of that. And the idea to do this maybe just for contractors is because it's a much smaller piece of work and should hopefully be much easier to deliver, or maybe find out it doesn't work. But as I say, this is very much a kind of like an initial idea, and we have got another technical workshop later in the week. So next slide, please. Thank you. Platform APIs. This is a different project that's going on in the in Hackett. There's a lot of work going on to change the way that we expose data from lots of different systems, especially when this data for a particular domain is in different places. So contacts, for instance, is held in about 4 or 5 different places. These APIs are being developed at the moment, and kind of it makes sense for us to use them because rather than all the data coming from one place, it will be consolidated, and we can integrate that with Repairs Hub, and that way, if the source of that data changes at any point in the future, it shouldn't affect Repairs Hub. It should still just be working in a nice way. So, cautionary contacts is one of those that's being built. Contacts is being worked on, and the other one at the bottom there, obviously, is properties. Thank you. Not sure who's working on this. I don't think I know this.
Sorry, I can pick this one up. So to move off UH, there's like a number of common technical components that we need. So quite a few of those are in place already. Quite a few aren't. And of the ones that aren't, these 3, work trays, task management, permissions manager, are going to be needed for Repairs Hub projects. So we kind of need to get some understanding about which of these we need to deliver as part of this project and which might be being delivered by other projects that are in place at the moment.
Okay, so I'm going to talk through some of the emerging themes came out of this first 2 sprints of research. Okay, so firstly, we all know that UH is very manual, it's slow, there's performance issues, but it was good during this first round of research to really understand from the perspective of contractors what their experience is like. Contractors, they all have their own systems, they all have their own processes. It's very inconsistent between the different contractors. And where they are so manual and where there is a lack of integration between UH and their own system, it's a very manual process, lifting and shifting the data from UH into their own system, only to then have to push that data back once a repair is finished. There's a lack of automation, so trying to keep up to date with the new repairs that have come in or waiting for approvals to be, knowing when they have been approved. They're constantly having to check UH, sometimes 3 times a day. Again, that varies between the different contractors. Where there are system delays, as say waiting for approvals to be done, or if the system goes down, they're having to then retrospectively update UH with all that information that initially wasn't put back in there. So although it's accepted by administrators on the contractor side, they understand it's a very manual process, there is a lot of reluctance, which especially where information has to be duplicated, it means that sometimes UH isn't necessarily updated as well. There could be workarounds to be able to deal with where the system has its limitations, leading to a sort of a reduced visibility of the progress of a repair. Okay, next slide, please, Sarah. So emails are one of the most common sort of workarounds. Not everyone is desk-based, so sometimes the transfer of data is made by email. Emails are also used to chase the progress of a repair. They're used when UH doesn't give them the format they need to be able to transfer data. For example, photos. One contractor was speaking about sending photos by email because it does not have the format they need to be able for the photos to be used later on. It's the quality. They're also used, emails are used as sort of a safety net to check that information has been transferred. They can be used as an audit trail. For example, I heard from one contractor about doing COVID checks, and where they couldn't get hold of a resident, they then sent an email to the RCC shared inbox to say that they hadn't been able to get hold of someone. But UH wasn't updated, so it was contained in an email. It means data can be trapped in emails, which is particularly a problem with people on holiday. And where notes aren't updated consistently, that means there is a lot of visibility in the progress of a repair. Okay, next one, please, Sarah. So UH notes, they are central to documenting the progress of a repair. We know that, and we know that the RCC, they're the ones that they know that's the place to check for the progress of repair. But where they're not being used consistently, that this is where there is a bit of an issue. Why aren't they being used consistently? The systems are slow, so for the contractors having to upload information, especially if they are duplicating effort, they've already updated their own system and having to update UH. Sometimes there is an inconsistency in what information is seen to be appropriate to be put onto notes, so there could be gaps there. So this leads to lots of conversations outside of UH. There'll be a lot of emails and phone calls. As you see from some of these quotes, at the bottom say, Hackney's always on the phone, calls from the call centre, calls from our customers. There's lots of chasing repairs. It takes up a lot of time and effort for the RCC. Okay, next slide, please. So you cannot underestimate the sort of power of relationships, personal relationships. This really came out of the interviews. They helped to get the jobs done. For example, speaking to an RCC agent, after she had raised a repair, she then followed that up with a phone call to a contractor who was booking the repair, so then they could get back to the resident straight away with an appointment time. Sharing information, I really got a feel for a strong relationship between one of the contract managers and a contractor. So the contractor knew that when they were going to hear back from them about approvals, particularly for variations. It's not consistent, but where there are strong relationships, it makes the whole process of repairs far more open. Okay, next slide, please. And so despite there being sort of frustrations with UH, there is an appetite from contractors to be able to access or use more of Hackney's system. 3 areas that came out was the need or the desire to be able to pull off reports from UH so they can compare with their own system. They are able to get this information, but often they're having to go through someone, and they would like to be able to just get that information when they need it. Being able to upload information from, say, inspections post a repair, rather than waiting to be asked for that information, just being able to upload information onto UH so it's available for Hackney. Also being able to have access to repair information, like the history of a repair, so they know what they're dealing with when they're going in to fix that repair. Okay, next slide, please. So as I said, we've been doing a lot of journey mapping, process mapping, to understand where there are challenges. And by defining and framing these challenges as opportunities, what we call how might we's, then we're able to look for areas to explore, some opportunities to explore. I'm not going to go through every box here. I'm just going to pick out a few. For example, booking an appointment. Contractors aren't alerted, as I've mentioned, to incoming jobs. So how might we better inform contractors that work is coming in, so they're able to act upon it accordingly? Raising and booking. Duplication, as I said before, duplication of effort, raise and repair on one system, raising it on their own system. How might we stream the handover between Hackney and contractors of information? Next slide, please. Contractor requesting variations. So once they have submitted that variation, there can be a delay in knowing when that's going to be approved and when they can actually carry out the work. So how might we allow contractors to better manage variations? And completing jobs. There's one crossed out here, so I just thought I'd mention it. So jobs to be completed but not updated in UH, so RCC can't see the status. So we did say, how might we help contractors to plan workload with RH? But something we've crossed out, it's not an immediate priority, as because contractors are already dealing with this with their own system. But this is a process that we're going to continue into the next sprint. As we're doing more interviews, we're going to be finding out more issues and then frame them as opportunities. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so our next steps, we are going to be looking to the proof of concept for the contractor backend, which is the new API and repairs database that Matt spoke about. Developing hypotheses, what should making these changes lead to? A co-design workshop to generate concepts and prototyping ideas based on the outcome of the workshops. So, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Are there any questions, comments?
One from Matthew in the chat about whether the inconsistent nature of property data from UH is going to be a problem. I don't think it's going to be like a blocker, but it's probably a consideration. Like we should be using LLPG by default, but I guess we need to put a lookup in to access data in some tables. We can do that.
The reason for asking is because if it is, we can either stand up a team to help with that in parallel, or we could alter the scope of what you're doing to fix that. But what we wouldn't want to do is find that we were producing workarounds to try and kind of manage that difficulty without confronting it head on, because we know it needs to be confronted. And we knew that when we were particularly going into repairs. It's such a key building block for everything else.
Appreciate that, Matthew.
Just to flag, so work trays, we've made good progress on manager tenancy, which has taken the work tray from manager ears and build on that further. In terms of permissions, as Matt mentioned, we've been defaulting to Google for authentication, but it only works internally, and obviously it has a so it's not an absolute deal blocker, but there's a cost implication if we were to extend that to contractors, it's what, £79 per user per year. So we need to consider that carefully. In terms of task management, there's a pattern we've got emerging from the shared plan, which is a piece of work we've done in around single view, which we're piloting at the moment with housing officers, which I think provides the basis for a starting point. I'm not sure it's much more than that at the moment. It seems to me as though the kind of oh, and sorry, the other thing to mention was that's just some of the stuff you've come up with in terms of relationships with contractors is reminiscent of the stuff we explored with the new builds team. And it's worth picking up on, again, some of those design patterns that we developed through that to find out whether those provide a basis that we can reuse for what you need to do next.
Yeah, it'd be good to arrange some demos of maybe that new build stuff and the work tray stuff that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can arrange that. Any other questions?
I'm only sitting here in stunned silence because it all made perfect sense to me, and it looks like it's all good progress. So I haven't got any comments or questions. So thank you for all that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve.
One thing I thought I'd ask as well is, I think Michelle is on the call as well here. There's another project going on at the moment that's funded by MRCLG, which has to do with repairs as well. And I reckon it might be quite useful to share insights from this project into the other one and vice versa. I'm not sure, Michelle, if you have anything to add to that respect.
Thanks, Boris. So yeah, you saw that I snuck in. Fortunately, Tom is also our delivery manager on that, so he's helping us to kind of cross over a bit anyway. But Dawn, I sent you a message this morning. I think it would be good to follow up with you just on some of your research. We are looking at creating, basically that project is a technical alpha. A prototype has already been created for how people can report repairs online. And we're just looking at how can different councils practically implement that with all of the different systems they have. So yeah, it would be definitely useful. Already on this call, I've started to think of some things I need to question some of you about.
And I think with that respect as well, one of the things we didn't talk about much yet, but that will form quite an important part of the technical aspect of the API on this project is the data standard, right? So we're talking about potentially using the hacked data standard, which could then be reused across different councils, across different applications, and it's quite a useful thing to look into. And we've already started looking into that. There's some shared materials in the Drive folder already.
Excellent. I think even knowing where we can't and documenting why we can't, and whether that's a constraint around Servitor, which should obviously be relevant for colleagues in Lincoln, or a constraint with the data standard that then we can work to improve, would be really helpful, because that data standard might provide the basis for what we want to do across replacing universal housing. It seems to me as though you're already coming up against issues where you've learned a really important thing, but as a project team you face a really clear choice between to what extent do we further explore this because it's interesting and would make the world a better place, versus actually doing this doesn't help us decommission universal housing in any way, it just makes the world a better place. And so we want to acknowledge that we've learned it, but recognise that might not be a problem that we can solve straight away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. There are definitely going to be like a conflict in priorities, and I think it's just going to be about getting that balance right of building the extension of the hub whilst migrating the data away from universal housing.
Yeah, and this is I'm sure David said it to you as well, but I can't remember whether he described it as one of his top 3 priorities or top 5 priorities, the decommissioning of UH. So you have that support when you have a choice to make. You have that support for opting for decommissioning UH over all else, which is not to say that other things we learn aren't important and don't also need to be done. It's just a question of what comes first.
Not sure if it's a priority or just a given.
Yeah, okay. I just mean that yes, you're right. I just mean that, of course, it's got that, that senior buy-in. We'll be presenting back to Ajman as Group Director of Neighbourhoods and Housing shortly on the progress we're making. So you continue to have that senior support for prioritising decommissioning UH.
Definitely, yeah.
Lovely. Any further questions? Anyone in housing? Take that as a positive sign.
Definitely.
I'll post the show and tell on Currents, and if anyone has any questions, meanwhile, please get in contact. And yeah, we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Thanks very much, team. Good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.